Yeah, I'm ready to go live. You fucking kidding me? Of course I am. Of course I am. Fucking ready to go live. Of course I am. Of course I'm ready to go live. Of course I am. Of course I'm ready to go live. I was born ready, baby. Ain't no thing. It's not like you have to fucking really do anything anyway, right? Turn it down a little bit. How is that? Hello, my name is Uncle Gameboy. Oh, that's kind of... Hello, my name is Uncle Gameboy. Is that okay? That's probably fine. Yeah. Okay. Alright. I think that should be good. Okay, so hi there. Hi there. Yeah, I didn't think I'd be doing this today. Neither did I. My name is Uncle Gameboy, and this is my show. We've got here the histories by Herodotus. We've got, got some music in the background. That's pretty cool. And some video to kind of go with what I'm reading. It's a book about ancient history. Everything else on Twitch is trying to destroy your mind and make you a fucking dolt and a dullard and other things that are terrible that you don't want to be, But I'm trying to enrich your life. I'm trying to give you culture and try to give myself culture and read you books and teach you things that are important and that will make you look like a good cookie, just like me. So let's get to it without further ado. This is Uncle Gameboy Show, and we're reading the histories by Herodotus, and we're going to try to get through this freaking intro today, okay? So, continuing from where we were. Oral tradition and historical narrative. Inquiring into existing foreign cultures and peoples is one thing. Inquiring into the past is quite another. With the former, there may be gulfs of comprehension, problems of perception and understanding, but if you were trying to investigate the past in the ancient Greek world, you were at the mercy of memory and tradition. The actual witnesses had died. There were few written sources to supplement the oral traditions. For events within living memory, like the Persian Wars, there were plenty of informants, eyewitnesses, and sons of participants, but the stories people were willing to give, as opposed to what they remembered privately, might be colored by the desire for personal fame or good reputation and political constraints. As we have seen, the conduct of the various Greek cities in the Persian Wars still continued to be As we have seen, the conduct of the various Greek cities in the Persian Wars still continued to be political dynamite. Herodotus tried to find out the truth, and as he continued to be political dynamite, I was about to read. Herodotus tried to find out the truth, and as he continued to be, not political dynamite. Herodotus tried to find out the truth, and as he made clear, he wished to mark out the brave and courageous, and those who betrayed the Greek liberty. Hence, oh my god, maybe I shouldn't have done this right now because I'm fucking having trouble reading for some reason. But hence, for example, he carefully distinguishes which cities and which individuals fought most courageously at Salamis and at the final mainland battle at Plataea. Their fame must be recorded for posterity. While the most thorough narrative covers the events leading up to the Persian Wars and the wars themselves, the histories are also an important source for much early Greek history. In this one work, he provides our main and earliest evidence for the Pisistrated tyranny of 6th century Athens and the struggles which ended it. He even provides us with the main narrative account of Cleisthenes' reforms of 507, which gave Athens her moderate democracy. They can be supplemented with later documentary evidence, but the short paragraph at 569, that's a citation in the book, is central. He provides the earliest and irreplaceable accounts of the great tyrannies of Greece, Kypselos and Kypselids at Corinth, Polycrates at Samos, Orthagoras at Sicyon, etc. His treatment of early Spartan history is fundamental, if flawed, like all accounts of early Spartan history, and he records important traditions about some of the cities which played part in the colonizing movement beginning in the 8th century, in which Greek communities were founded all around the Mediterranean. But these accounts are often more akin to anecdotal stories, or they have the rounded perfection of folktales without the historical credibility or political bite that we might wish. The fabulous story of how the infant Kypselos, the later tyrant of Corinth, was saved from murder by the ruling clan has elements which can be found in folk tales about founding figures across the world. Kypselos, as a baby, is hidden from certain murder in a chest, or a Kypselos, I guess that's where he got his name from. Sorry. And spirited away to return later as ruler, a tale reminiscent of the tale of Moses and the bulrushes, the infancy of Cyrus the Great, who was to be exposed on a hillside when he was a baby, and the tale of Oedipus. In Herodotus' account of Cyrus's early years, he also refers to the well-known tale of the Persians that the baby Cyrus was suckled by a bitch, which he claims was a story put about by the real parents who created the story to show his miraculous preservation. The version Herodotus prefers has a rationalized element in which a woman with the odd name Kino, or bitch, that's not a very nice thing to name your daughter, wishes to save the baby Cyrus. We are clearly dealing with storytelling motifs which have grown up around certain figures, perhaps borrowed across cultures, and the amount of hard historical fact is probably minimal. It is just possible that Kypselos' name, which means chest, points to a kernel of truth, but we seem to be dealing with folktales and oral traditions which have survived generations. In addition to this, Herodotus has probably remolded the story yet again to suit his narrative, for it appears in a speech on the evils of tyranny. The impression of Herodotus' naivete, much of the famous Herodotean charm, the delight of the good story, the moralizing tales, are largely bound up with the presence of such folk tales, which often form an important narrative of this important part of this narrative. Jesus Christ. These were the traditions of the Greeks, though, and it is simplistic to see them merely as signs of Herodotus' naive credulity. The Greeks knew of their past from oral traditions, and in part from the poetic traditions, which themselves preserved or created some oral traditions. But events that occurred more than 3 generations ago would only be very loosely remembered and increasingly altered by the various oral traditions, unless they were embedded in the more lasting form of poetry, or they would be forgotten altogether. The Greeks had no formalized way of memorizing oral traditions of the recent past. Epic dealt with the distant heroic past, so their traditions were particularly at the mercy of the vagaries of memory and the simplifying process of telling a good story. Above all, there had to be reasons of some kind not only to remember a tale, but to pass it on down the generations. Those very reasons for transmitting the tales themselves play a part in the selection of the tales and the angles given to these tales which are passed on. Glorious achievements, for instance, are more keenly remembered than inglorious. A community will retain elements on the collective memory which may be different from those remembered by a family. There is a tendency for oral traditions to conform increasingly to communal fears and ideals, the ideals of the group. After all, one does not retell tales that an audience does not wish to hear. Very true. Oh shit. Using my computer to support my book. This isn't the best. I'm thinking of maybe try a different setup where I can maybe sit more comfortably or more easily read. So, but I'm making do for now. I'll be fine. I'm good. Yeah, I think this is a nice aesthetic. It's a nice fucking aesthetic I'm putting together here, if I don't mind saying so myself, and I don't at all. I don't mind at all. Anyway, this explains why so many of the tales about the more distant past are noticeably more stylized than Herodotus' accounts of the recent past, the Ionian Revolt and the Persian Wars. Many tyrant tales were presumably transmitted in order to glorify the city's liberation from tyranny. Herodotus could omit these or retell them, while Thucydides chose instead to offer a concise and rationalized view of early Greek history down to the Persian Wars, based on abstract theories about the growth of power. We may presume that Herodotus relayed many of the traditions mostly as he heard them, though he may have altered them further to point out a moral or to fit what he thought plausible within his narrative. It is because he lacked Thucydides' distaste for such traditions that we are in the fortunate position of having a wealth of Greek oral traditions about the Archaic Age. Yeah. And I can tell you, I've read both of these fucking books, both the one by Thucydides and the one by Herodotus, and I like the one by Herodotus better, if I do say so myself, alright? As he wrote of events closer to his own period, Herodotus' narrative became more detailed. His account of the fall of the Athenian tyranny of the late 6th century, it's hard to say, and the eventual establishment of democracy is complex and sophisticated. It was not drawn, as used to be thought, from a single family source, and he was not taken in by the popular tradition of Athens, which glorified the tyrannicides. Ooh, that's a fun word. Tyrannicide. Tyrannicide, yeah. Which glorified the tyrannicides, even though they did not really end the tyranny. His account of the Ionian revolt from 499 to 495 is even more thorough. That too had important resonances in his day, for he claimed that the Persian king only thought of attacking Greece because Athens sent ships to help the Ionians free themselves. Only 20 ships, but, quote, these ships were the beginning of the evils for the Greeks, unquote, as he adds ominously and decisively, echoing Homer in the Iliad. The account of the Ionian revolt suffers from a curious emphasis on the petty and personal motifs of individuals who held responsible positions under the Persians, the tyrants Hystaios and Aristagoras, and it may well be that the tradition, or rather various traditions, were affected by the disastrous fact of failure. Since the revolt failed, memories were perhaps fragmented into recriminations, criticism of the Persian-backed tyrants, self-criticism for lack of discipline and organization. But even here we can be under no illusions about the importance of the revolt. Herodotus devoted considerable space to it, and while the reasons for its origins and failure do not entirely cohere, there can be no doubt that this was a politically charged narrative. The fate of the Ionian cities under the Athenian Empire was one that many cities regretted, others embraced, and it may have seemed important to Herodotus, who was from Asia Minor himself, to affirm that the Greeks of Asia Minor did in fact revolt, that they had tried to gain freedom. They had not merely fought on the Persian side, but their geographical situation on the edge of the Persian Empire made it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to defeat the Persians, as discussions of the future of the Ionians attest. As he drew nearer his own time, Herodotus could use living witnesses, but he names very few. It is interesting that each of the witnesses he does name gives striking and surprising information. One was Thersandros, who told Herodotus about a banquet from Persian commanders he had attended in Thebes a few days before the Battle of Plataea. His Persian neighbor at the banquet told him, weeping, that he thought the battle to come would leave few Persians alive. Herodotus also mentions an Archias, a Spartan whom he met in Sparta itself, who told him about the activities of his grandfather, also called Archias, whose bravery in the Spartan siege of Samos had been honored by the Samians with a public burial. A third named informant is Tymnes, an agent of the Scythian king, who tells about the sage Anacharsis and his family. We're almost done with this fucking introduction. How about that? We can guess at other specific informants. Zopyrus, for instance. Oh my god, I can't wait to get to the story of Zopyrus. I can't wait to actually get to the meat of this text. You know, there is a book in here. It's not just an introduction, despite everything I've read being just like, you know, preface material. There is a book here. And Zopyrus is one of the craziest stories in it. I'm looking forward to getting that. We can guess at other specific informants. Zopyrus, for instance, the grandson of the Zopyrus who helped Darius capture Babylon by a bizarre stratagem. Yeah, bizarre to say the least. I mean, I won't spoil anything. I said something in an earlier stream, but you know, my streams are they just kind of go out into the ether and just float around in space. No one ever contacts them, you know. So I don't think anyone ever saw that. And I sort of spoiled the story of Zopyrus then. But oh boy, the story of Zopyrus is fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy. You're going to want to stay tuned, all right? Because that fucking shit, they'll be glad you did. That's all I'm going to say. Let's see. We can guess at other specific informants. Zopyrus, for instance, the grandson of the Zopyrus who helped Darius capture Babylon by a bizarre stratagem. For we have reason to believe the younger Zopyrus visited Athens, and Herodotus could easily have met him there. It would be hard to miss him. That's all I'm going to say. Zopyrus could have given him access to inside information about the conspiracy by which Darius seized the Persian throne. Many other informants remain unnamed, but Herodotus also stresses information that he received from Egyptian priests and other logioi, such as the priests of Thebes and Dodona. There is little reason to doubt Herodotus did talk to such people, the elite of their communities, though his Egyptian priests might have been quite lowly or the product of some misunderstanding of categories. For instance, he may have talked to people who he took to be priests who were in fact more lowly. But we need also to take him wait. But we also need to take into account the vaguer, more nebulous general traditions and beliefs, which can perhaps be called social memory or collective memory. The general traditions that a community might have about its past, and which might be embedded in monuments or poetry. These surely existed, though would probably still be elite members of such communities who relayed such traditions to Herodotus. Get it together. Get your fucking tongue together. She sells seashells down by the seashore. There we go. Okay. Often these general traditions are cited so as to contrast them with the views of another group. For instance, the defamatory account of what the Corinthian contingent did at Salamis is presented as what the Athenians say, but the Corinthians deny that it has any truth at all. In fact, it is interesting that Herodotus felt he needed to distinguish different traditions, different views of various groups at all, and to mark this in the text. Thucydides, after all, mentioned virtually no informants nor divergent views, perhaps in reaction to Herodotus. We cannot leave the histories without a strong sense of separate polis traditions and diverging views. The author often leaves his audience to decide. It has been aptly said of Herodotus that he did not invent his sources, he discovered the problem of sources. This is where Herodotus' sense of inquiry as belonging to the contemporary world intersects with his practice of distinguishing traditions and occasionally naming informants. His preoccupation with sources and evidence, with criticizing traditions, and his presentation of his inquiries in terms which sometimes mirror contemporary philosophical or scientific discussions, all indicate that his basic approaches to his inquiry, despite the marvels or traditions and tall tales, belong to the intellectual currents of the latter part of the 5th century. The period of the Greek Enlightenment saw an exploration of methods of arriving at the truth. The thinkers of the time developed new habits of argument, they explored the production of evidence and new ideas about what constituted proof and evidence. This is strikingly clear in early oratory and in the early medical writers who were less concerned with abstract philosophical argument than with the business of diagnosing and curing patients. When he explicitly states and shares his methods, when he reveals a source or a group tradition or argues for his own view, and when he reveals or constructs his personality as an inquirer, also absent from Thucydides, Herodotus seems to be identifying himself as belonging to the same late 5th century intellectual milieu. I'm just going to say this real quick, okay? This is partially like, I mean, it's all for me. It has to be. It must be, because no one else is enjoying it or watching it or even knows that it exists. If they knew it exists, I'm sure they'd watch it and enjoy it. I'm sure they would. I'm sure they wouldn't just look at it confusingly and then turn it off immediately. But, regardless, you might be, anyone who were to watch this would probably say, oh, this guy's a real mush-mouth, marble-mouth bitch, huh? And first of all, that's very rude, okay? I was diagnosed with a speech impediment when I was a child, okay? And sure, that was a long time ago. But you know what? I also fucking was in a freaking accident where I had a fucking tracheotomy, as I'm sure you can maybe see. And I wasn't able to talk for a very long time. And I'm still getting my voice back. So you know what? This is like me talking all this much and reading all this stuff is kind of to do that, to get my voice back, to get, into the habit of speaking and trying to get some of the marbles out of my mouth or whatever. How dare you, first of all, criticize me for such a thing, first of all. But you know what? I don't really give a shit at the same time, because this is for me and I'm enjoying it and I'm getting something out of it. I'm reading a freaking book. I've read more in the past week than I have in freaking 2 years. Freaking amazing. And I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep reading this book to you people. I'm going to read the whole fucking thing to you. And I'm going to read more books to you. I'm going to keep reading to you, because you're not going to read to yourself. Your fucking daddy ain't gonna read to you, okay? There's nothing. You have no hope if it's not for me, okay? It may not matter. It may not make a difference. It may not do anything to save the world at all. But you know what? I'm not gonna fucking say that I didn't try. All right? You can't say I didn't fucking try. You can't say I didn't fucking try. All right? You can't say I don't fucking try. You can't. You can't, because I'm trying right now. I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to save you and teach you something. And if you don't appreciate or benefit from it or do anything with it, that's your own ass. That's your own ass, and I can't help you save your ass any more than I am right now. Unfortunately. I'm doing my best. Let's see, where were we? In the middle of Book 2, Herodotus says, "Thus far I have relied on my own sight, opsis, and inquiry, history, and judgment, nome. But from now on I rely on accounts, logioi, given to me by the Egyptians, though with a little of my own autopsy, or opsis, and with the switches to the accounts of Egypt's past history." He is shifting from the type of knowledge that can be acquired by autopsy or sight, experience, and research, mostly Egyptian geography and social religious practices, to the more problematic use of tradition or hearsay, or akoué, for accounts of the past. In his very self-consciousness about this shift, and even more in the fact that he marks it explicitly, Herodotus was using the methods and style also familiar in the late 5th century medical world. We should presume that this was the now fashionable way of talking about the process of inquiry, but it was the radical achievement of Herodotus, so far as our evidence indicates, to apply those methods and that style to a sustained inquiry into the peoples of the inhabited world and to the narrative of the past itself. That was a motherfucker to get through. Herodotus' lasting achievement in the histories was eventually to change the meaning of history or inquiry for later generations to that of proper history. This inquiry encompassed the longest and most sustained investigation yet attempted into the past, and especially the recent past, which was susceptible to rational inquiry, rather than the mythical periods which were the conventional material of poetry, and which earlier mythographers had tried to rationalize. Since Herodotus' inquiry was also very much concerned with separating true accounts from false, with sifting arguments and traditions, and investigating causes, however conceived, above all the causes of the Greek-barbarian conflict, it can emphatically be seen as a work of history, and Herodotus thus is the first historian. But it is much more besides. While the geography and ethnography illuminate the historical process and events, they are also there in their own right. For his own audience in the Greek world, his subject encompassed the whole of human activity as the known world of his day. Thus writes Rosalind Thomas of Balliol College at Oxford University for the introduction of the histories, the landmark Herodotus, the histories, edited by Robert B. Strassler. Finally fucking did it. Got through that intro. You might be saying to yourself, "Oh, that's all the intro. Oh, my sweet summer child. You have no fucking idea what you're talking about." First, we have the editor's preface to get through. Then we have the translator's preface, which is basically like a paragraph, so that's not too much. I'm going to try to read this, because that's what I do. I don't know if you know this, and you don't know this. Why would you know this? You don't know me. But I read the entire King James Bible, and I read it cover to cover. And then I've interacted with other people that said they read the whole thing, and then they didn't read the whole thing. And that's the case with a lot of people who read books. It's probably something that you do, okay? If you ever do freaking crack open a book, you fucking skip through it, you go past the parts you find boring or whatever, you assume that nothing important happens for pages and pages, and you skip them, and you make yourself a great fool by claiming that you've read something that you didn't even begin to read, that you've never read to completion, and thus you've never read it all, okay? So we're going to read the editor's preface. I'm going to read like a couple pages of it, because I'm fucking sweating right now. Okay. This is probably going to be even less interesting than the intro. Although, let's say, so the editor's preface by Robert B. Strassler. Although I had a high opinion of Herodotus when I began his work on this edition in 1997, I felt at the time that Thucydides was the greater historian of the two. That is no longer my view. In fact, I come away from completing this edition with a profound admiration for the histories that transcends comparison with other works. Many elements of the narrative that at first appeared to me as weaknesses now appear to me to be remarkable achievements. What I initially saw as arbitrary digressions now stand revealed as cleverly inserted background material that often proves vital to a reader's understanding of later, sometimes much later, episodes. His omnivorous curiosity, which struck me as misplaced in a volume of history, now appears as a fascinating and valuable asset to historical comprehension. The vast scope of his tale in time and territory, which seemed so bewildering at first, proves in the end to be a fitting background for the epic scale of his climax. In short, I now admire the skill with which he crafted such a brilliant account of Persia's worldwide expansion and the unexpected defeat at the hands of the mainland Greeks. I hope that many of those who read this volume or any text of Herodotus, there's other. Oh, it's got to be. I mean, I don't think Herodotus wrote anything else but this that it exists anyway. I feel like I would have found it and read it, but maybe not. It's probably just like another version of this kind of thing. I hope that many of those who read this volume, or any text of Herodotus for that matter, will come to understand why I feel this way about Herodotus, and will come to share my opinion. Herodotus has been called the quote-unquote father of history, and whether or not we would credit him with originating the field, we in the English-speaking world must admit that his work is the progenitor of much that we now call history. We are the cultural heirs, one might say the direct intellectual, oh my god, the direct intellectual descendants. Oh my god, we are the cultural heirs, or one might say the direct intellectual descendants of Herodotus and other ancient Greek writers. For better or worse, our concepts and vocabularies for many disciplines, history, medicine, philosophy, mathematics, architecture, sculpture, theater, poetry, to name a few, have come down to us from these ancient Greeks, many of whom not only pioneered these fields, but also produced brilliant works in them, whose excellence is still recognized by us today, 2,400 years later. Herodotus is one of those, and the Histories is his masterpiece. Our direct line of descent from his this is easier to read than the intro. Our direct line of descent from his intellectual world, however, does not mean that everything he wrote can be easily understood by us. Although he says in his proem that he had posterity in mind when he wrote, he could hardly have foreseen the immense changes that have occurred in human life for the past 2.5 millennia. Nor can he be faulted for this. Who among us would have the temerity to predict what human life will look like 2.5 millennia from now? Herodotus simply assumed that his readers would always be familiar with many elements of ancient Greek life about which he wrote and in which he lived. Thus, he provided little explanation, elaboration, or background on what, to his ancient readers, would have been common and familiar aspects of life, but which today have become long dead and forgotten customs and practices. The geography he describes has in some instances changed substantially over the centuries, and many of the cities and sites which figure in his narratives have disappeared or now exist under different names. I've mentioned this before, and that is a pickle that you gotta fucking lickle to fucking figure out this stuff. It can be quite frustrating. Difficult. Which renders most modern maps useless and in some cases deceptive. Yes, that's what I'm referring to. I've mentioned this before, but I had to have many tabs open with many maps of various like time periods, like both referencing modern maps and today's and maps that would have been correct, at this time period, so that I could understand what the fuck I was even reading. I'm not sure how we're gonna fucking do that on here. I like to have this little Greek video play while I'm doing this. I'm glad I was able to figure out how to do the music without it. That was a bit of a bitch, but I shall overcome, and I did overcome. But but I would like to have these maps up there so I can maybe show you what some of this stuff is, because I can't just like do this. I can't just do this. I can't just do this. I can't just like do this. Like, here, look at this. Just look at this for a minute. That'd be kind of a pain in the ass, both for me and for you, I think. Should you ever decide to watch this, So anyway, I'm gonna blow my nose real quick. Lord above, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Who were we? Where the fuck? Right. Military tactics, religious rites, and political rules of ancient Greece are complete mysteries to current readers who know nothing of road worships, animal sacrifices, and other pagan religious rituals, or the rules and procedures of ancient Greek political institutions. Oh, animal sacrifices and pagan religious rituals? Speak for yourself, motherfucker. I'm just kidding. I don't do that mess. All right. Anyway. Unfortunately, current editions of Herodotus, although they may present skillful translations from the Greek, make little attempt to provide needed background and information. Information. They contain only a small number of often inadequate maps. That is true. That is true. I think this is when I asked for this book for Christmas, and my mother was so kind to get it for me. And the reason I got this is because when I first read this book and I got a copy from the library, it's a much less substantial book. It's much smaller. It's maybe it might be about as thick. There's no way it has anywhere near as many maps in it. And you need a lot of maps in this. Like I said, I'm not even joking. Probably 75 tabs of maps. It's fucking crazy. Can you imagine that? 75 tabs of maps. So many tabs of maps that drive you fucking out your fucking ass. It's fucking crazy. Tabs out your ass. Can you imagine? Tabs out your ass. It's fucking deplorable. Anyway, I'm sorry I keep digressing. I was like, I want to know how much I can freaking read more of this freaking crap. And I'm freaking oh my god, there's so much more. There's so much more. I don't fucking know. I'm freaking trying to do what I can do. I'll do what I can do. Okay? Unfortunately, the current editions of Herodotus, they may present skillful translations from the Greek, make little attempt to provide needed background information. They contain only a small number of often incorrect maps, sparse indexes, incomplete, and sometimes incorrect chronologies. There we go. So you have to speed up the tape a sec, but now we're back on track. And a few, if any, helpful appendices. There are exceptions to this blanket criticism, but no edition I know of makes a concerted or systematic effort to inform the reader of the general context or about what some obscure but important elements of the text might mean, or even where and when the events described took place. Modern readers who lack special schooling or assistance of some sort understand progressively less about what is happening as they proceed into the book and soon find the going arduous and confusing. I can understand that. It took real effort on my part to fucking read this thing. Anyway, sorry I keep digressing, but where was I? Shit, fuck. Yeah, there we go. After all, how much can readers expect to comprehend of a historical narrative if they are not informed of the date or location of events, cannot envision the temporal or geographic relationship between those events, or are unaware of the meaning and significance of important aspects of those events? This ignorance creates a barrier which obscures the reader's perception, diminishes their interest, and separates them from an essential quality of the narrative, its historicity. At its worst, the text becomes something like a literary exercise, a dreary recitation of disconnected incidents at unknown places concerning artificial characters whose names cannot be pronounced. I could easily see how someone could get this. It took my whole fucking ass to read this book. So I'm trying to help you understand it, because you would never take on such a task on your own. You can't even fucking read Hop on Pop. You'd have no fucking hope with the histories, okay? If you even had the fucking intellectual drive to fucking even attempt such a thing, which you also don't have. Stupidity is not just a lack of knowledge. There's also a lack of interest in knowledge, and I know the distinction, and I can tell that you are, by virtue of being on Twitch, afflicted with both, unfortunately, that you both know nothing and don't want to know anything. And the first one can be forgiven, but the second one is truly a sin and must be punished with painful death, I'm afraid to say. I'm sorry. The state of things does get me down. It really does. I'm trying to save you folks. I'm doing what I can. I'm doing my part by doing this very important public service, I'll say. This very important public service that I'm so kindly providing for you. I could be doing other things with other people. I'm highly in demand and I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of things to keep me busy. So it's really a wonderful thing I'm doing for you, and I hope you appreciate it, is all I'm saying. So anyway, at best it reads like a modern fantasy novel, but all too often it is a bad novel, a boring novel. It's too bad. That's too bad that that's what people think of this. And then it's on you. It's on you if you didn't put the effort into it to understand it. That's like what I'm trying to do with my Baldur's Gate stream thing. That's the thing. That's the way I approach things. Let me just get on the soapbox for a minute. That's the way I approach things, and I think that's the way you should approach things too. In all ways in life, and every opportunity, you should try to be more like Uncle Gameboy. You should try to be born like me. All right. And I don't like Baldur's Gate 3. I think Baldur's Gate 3 sucks. But everyone keeps saying it's great and it's important and it matters and it's enriching and fulfilling and the greatest thing they've ever done in their life. And so I'm giving it another shot to see if I can fucking understand what the fuck people like this fucking game for so much, because I don't fucking like it and I'm trying to fucking like it and I'm doing my best, okay? So in a similar sense, if you think that history is just dumb and boring and not worth your time, it's probably on your ass. You probably did something wrong, okay? You're not appreciating it in the right way, okay? Much like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, it is above your ken, and you need to become more of a worthwhile person in order to understand it. And there's only so much I can do to help you with that. At the end of the day, this is a journey you must walk on your own. The greatest of journeys begins with one step, I hear. Take the step. Do it. Make the walk and go. That's all I have to say to you right now about it. I have to get back to reading. I have to get back to the important thing that I said I was going to do for you. Anyway. This transformation or degradation is particularly lamentable in the case of Herodotus, whose work, although it includes explicitly identified speculative and fabulous episodes, is truly a historical account of momentous and dramatic events that really took place. It's also unfortunate because some of the shit in this book is fucking nuts, and it will fucking eclipse any sort of shock or scandalization you feel at the events of Game of Thrones. This shit goes hard. This shit goes very hard, I'll have you know. Let's see how far we can get through this. If I just shut up and read the book. The Persians did mount attacks on mainland Greece, and they were repulsed. Arrow and spearheads have been collected from the battlefields of Thermopylae and Marathon and are now displayed in museums. Many of the participants in this battle struggle, Greeks and Persians alike, were brave and intelligent men who acted and risked all without knowing what the future would hold. And because Herodotus is a talented writer, his text can convey the dread that men feel when facing an unknown, ominous future. If he set out, as he says, to preserve for us the momentous deeds of real men in the real past, he has succeeded brilliantly. For if a reader today is unable to recognize that excellence, cannot perceive its power, and is not moved by the historical reality that lies at the heart of the text, then the reader has missed the essence of Herodotus and of history. Yes, I very much agree with that. The Landmark Edition is an attempt to reduce the barriers between the general reader and Herodotus's text. It employs many of the same elements that were used 11 years ago in the Landmark Thucydides, which I also own, I'll have you know. Both editions, for example, contain a large number of maps, side notes, and footnotes, but since the two ancient texts differ significantly in scope and method, the number and nature of these and other features are not identical. In the section that follows, I give a brief description and explanation of how the maps, notes, and other features listed in this volume's contents page are to be read and used. Okay, this is dry. This is just how to read maps. I think I should read this, and you don't need to read this. Maybe I'm just kind of like looking at these and yeah, this is just how to read a book. The rest of this is just how to read a book. I'm not gonna force you to read that. Let's see. Does this get more like informational stuff? It's not just, I know what these terms mean. Acknowledgements. I don't need to read a list of things. Like I said, if I'm reading a book, I'm just sort of giving my bona fides. I've read Chronicles in the Bible, which is basically just like a list of hundreds of names that just go on and on and on and on and on. But I read every single one. I read even the name Hogla, okay? That one stood out to me. Who on earth would name their daughter Hogla? Who would name their daughter Hogla? That's not a very nice thing to call your daughter that you love, by the way. Yeah, okay, translator's preface. Okay, I'm surprised, folks, but I'm just speaking to myself, I'm trying to get into the fucking tenor of how you do this stuff without, I guess revealing how intensely lonely I am and how no one is interested in what I'm doing at all. I don't have an audience, I guess, in other words. I don't have a freaking audience. I'm not talking to anybody except myself. All right, but I'm glad that we got through this. And next time I do this is mostly just to see how the music sounds. I'm going to go back and listen to this and see. Hopefully it was good. But we got through the introduction. We finally got through the introduction, and next time, folks, we are starting with the first part, book 1 of the histories by Herodotus, as translated by Robert B. Strassler. And buddy, it's going to get sick, it's going to get twisted, it's going to get bloody, it's going to get complicated, all right? It's ancient Greece. It's ancient Greece, and you're going to learn a thing or two. Not just about how this book was written and sort of, ideology, let's say, that went into constructing it, which has been the subject of the past 3 Uncle Game Boys Becoming Cultured and You Can Too episodes. But next time, I promise you're getting actual culture news you can use, okay? Because we're going to be reading the histories of the Herodotus proper. And I hope I see you then. I really hope I do. I'll be watching, I'll be waiting. Don't worry where. Nearby. That's all you need to know. I'll be nearby. Always. Waiting for you so I can read you a book. My name is Uncle Game Boy. This has been the Uncle Game Boy Show. It'll be back soon enough. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Bye.